Hey there, welcome back to the channel. Thanks for watching. I've got a special one today. This is something you're going to like. This is an Epiphone Les Paul custom of the Inspired by Gibson series. And we're going to compare this directly to its big brother that's hanging on the wall there, the Gibson Les Paul custom. I believe it's a classic custom, but it'll give us a great idea as to Gibson quality versus these new Epiphones. I think you'll be surprised. Okay, let's start just with a visual inspection. We've got the headstock on the Epiphone here. As you can see, it has the new open book headstock, much closer to the Gibson. But just looking at quality, you know, if we were objective about these guitars, great logo, super crisp and clear, really nice split diamond inlays, and a 3-screw truss rod cover, but it looks super crisp. And the binding is great. Okay, let's segue to the Gibson. Okay, here's the Gibson. Just from a quality standpoint, we can see there is finish checking around the logo. Easily forgivable. A lot of people really like nitro lacquer because it has some of those qualities, kind of characteristics. But it's definitely something worth mention. You know, if the Epiphone had that, I think people would be saying it sucked. But on the Gibson, somehow it's forgivable. Moving forward, the split diamond is a little bigger and possibly looks a little better, depending on your taste. And the truss rod cover is a 2-screw, which is obviously more vintage accurate. But definitely, I would say overall, quality and look, they are about the same. You know, this one loses points for the cracking around the logo, and the other one I guess loses points because it's not as cool as Gibson, but easily a tie in my opinion. Okay, let's look to the back of the headstock. Now this has sealed tuners. Let's see, what kind are these? Oh, they're Grover tuners. Okay, let's segue to the Epi. Okay, here's the Epi, and it has Grover tuners. So I'm assuming they're similar quality, at least probably the same quality. And both of them do a rock solid job of tuning, other than, of course, most Les Pauls drop tune on the G string, and we'll see if these do as well. Okay, while we're here, let's take a look at the fingerboard. Now the Epiphone has ebony, which looks fantastic, and really nice fake mother of pearl inlays. Let's segue to the Gibson. Okay, here's the Gibson. Now this being the custom classic, I believe this is not ebony. I'm going to have to look that up. I'll label it in the video right up here when I figure that out. But it looks like a really dark rosewood, whatever this wood is, so I'll find out. Now, if you look at the fret ends on the Gibson, this has fret end binding, which looks fantastic, feels great, and is an expensive feature. Let's segue to the Epi. Okay, so the Epi does not have fret end binding. You can just feel the fret metal, but they're finished so well, I'm not sure that I could pick up on the feel of the difference. This just feels so good. So I'm going to call that a tie, even though the fret end binding is one of my favorite features visually. But this just feels so close, I'd have a hard time knocking this guitar for that. Let's move to the neck joint. Here we see this is the Epiphone, and it looks fantastic. Now this being a custom, it has the binding on the back, and you can see the detail. It's really well done, really well. Okay, let's segue to the Gibson. Okay, there's the Gibson, and it looks the same quality, feels the same. Now this being the custom, or the classic custom, there's no binding on the back. But we can't take away points for that. It's just this model doesn't have that. A Gibson Les Paul custom would have the binding the same as the Epi. Just looking at the overall quality and finish on the guitar. This one has been resprayed, but it is very similar to the factory nitro finish, and it feels fantastic. I just love the feel of this. It's a little bit stickier than poly, but this one's not too sticky. But it looks nice. Nice sheen to it. let's segue to the Epi. Okay, there's the Epi. So obviously this one is stark alpine white. It's a new guitar, whereas the Gibson is older and has a really nice yellow aged look to it. So I prefer the yellowed on the Gibson, but if we're just comparing quality out of the box, I have to say this feels just as good. I'm not saying that because this is my guitar. I would tell you honestly if it felt a little thick or cheap, and it does not. These new Inspired by Gibsons, that's one thing they've really, I believe, thinned out how thick the finish is, and it just feels fantastic. The binding is all right up to Gibson quality, in my opinion. So let's take a look at that. Let's look at the horn, just how smooth the binding is and where they scrape away the paint. And let's segue to the Gibson. And here's the Gibson, and it looks about the same to my eye. If anything, the Epiphone may have a slight edge just in the smoothness of the scrape, but very close. Both of them look totally fantastic. I wouldn't complain about that for sure on either one. Now I mentioned the body wood. This is would be solid mahogany. Being a custom, it's hard to tell because it's under paint, but I would say it's likely 2 pieces in the Gibson, and in the Epiphone it could be more. They might use 3 or 4 pieces, but that's a guess, and not really important to me either way. They're both solid mahogany, as is the neck. These would have a solid mahogany neck. Now the Gibson, this would not have a scarf joint under the paint, I believe. And let's segue to the Epi. Here's the Epi, and this would have a scarf joint in here, but we can't see it, so it's under the paint. I'm not sure. Some people think it's a pro, some people think it's a con. I'm of the belief it doesn't really matter. So take what you want from that. Let's look at the hardware. Now this is the Epiphone, and this little wheel, I always look at that for an indication, and it's not super precise. I think we'll see a difference there, but it all looks really good quality. I'm going to say probably a 8 out of 10 for machining. Let's segue to the Gibson. And there's the hardware. To me, the spinning wheel looks more precise on the Gibson, which would indicate higher quality hardware. The knobs look great on the Gibson, nice crisp numbers, really clear plastic. Look like total quality. Okay, let's go to the Epi. And there's the Epi, and to my eye, they look exactly the same. So that's good. I guess we'll take a look at the switch here while we're on the Epiphone, and it feels really solid. Not a lot of play, a little bit of play, but obviously a really good clear connection each time. Let's go to the Gibson. Okay, here's the Gibson. It feels a little looser, but oddly not any more play. It's kind of hard to explain. Just doesn't feel as engaged, but feels good quality. So we'll call that a tie. I guess that's about it for the visual inspection of the guitars. I could mention the action on this guitar, being the Gibson, is really, really low and plays great. And the Epiphone actually is about the same. It's low, it feels super good. So that way, I'd say they're very comparable. They play almost identical. But let's run through some sound tests and see what you think. Thanks for watching. Cheers.